Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode, I should say, of Talking Success. This is a really interesting part of payments, and probably slightly broader than that. I know we've covered a huge amount over the last 4 or 5 years, and we've covered the sort of travel, the tourism, hospitality, B2B payments. But there's one element that I think will strike most people listening to this. I'm not generalizing here, but when it comes down to schools, right? So if you think about the schools, certainly here in South Africa, how much or how many transactions are made within a school? Now, it's not just school fees, which unfortunately quite a few people have to encounter here in South Africa, but there's also the ancillary services, so school trips, buying lunch. There is the tuck shops. There are sports. There's activities. There's all these other sort of elements, and you're thinking, well, there may be a popular player in that market, which we'll cover on a little bit later. And I first met Theo, who's joined me today, actually on a payments working group that was focused on something called EZAR, which I think I've spoken about in the past, which is a rand-backed stablecoin. So I'm sitting here when I first met Theo going, what on earth has a stablecoin got to do with the education system and payments within education? We had a chat, I think it was last week, and he kind of opened my eyes to this world of payments within the education system. And it's not just tertiary, it's across the length and breadth of education here in South Africa. So I asked him to come on the podcast today and really talk us through, first of all, what that sort of landscape and that world looks like. I'm quite unfamiliar with it. As a student, I'm very unfamiliar with it. I dropped out of school as soon as I could. But my kids, my stepkids are in school, so I'm familiar with the types of payments that need to be made, which are far too frequent and far too much. But that's a story for another day. Theo is an expert in this field. He's built a really interesting business based out in Cape Town in Somerset West, and he's going to tell us about that today. So Theo, thanks so much for coming on. I really, really do appreciate it. I know you've got quite a popular surname, right? If you're in the world of rugby, if I'm not mistaken. I did pick that up and thought, you're another kind of Brian Habana.
No,
Well, you're
Darren.
not, but you've got the hair that looks like you should be in a box team.
So on the surname, maybe just thanks for having me today. It's we'd really enjoy speaking about the topics we're going to be covering today. And I often get the whole, are you family with Theo Kitshoff? And I wish everyone listening to this podcast can watch it, because they'll definitely see the resemblance between my shoulder width and that Kitshoff shoulder width, right? No, so not at all related, but you don't have a lot of Kitshoffs in South Africa at least. So yeah, but in any case, thanks for having me. I'm excited for the discussion lying ahead.
Well, let's frame this, okay? So let's first talk about Sticcit. Let's talk about the business first, because then I think that's going to set a really good scene for some of the challenges you're looking to solve and are solving. So do you want to give us a quick kind of background, where you guys came from, what it is you do, and how the business has evolved?
Yeah, 100%. So three of us started the business together. It's now almost 7 years ago. Can't believe how quickly time flies by. But without giving the full backstory, I come from the banking space, and my two co-founders, they come from the technology. They built the first BlackBerry apps in the Pretoria BlackBerry Apps Lab. That was about, I probably think, like 12, 13 years ago now. So we had sort of a combo of financial services, banking, together with technology, and almost like business process optimization type worlds coming together. And since varsity, we always had this dream of, trying to use the skills that we've got to really make as much of an impact in moving an industry forward as we possibly can. And it was while working sort of in the banking industry that, for me, something that was quite obvious was that it felt that the banking environment evolved not necessarily because of what people truly struggled with when it comes to money matters, but more how they could solve for the economic model, which really came under attack with forums like Basel and those sort of requirements coming into the banking landscape and making it much more expensive for banks to do what they do, and ultimately meet shareholder level returns that they require to pay back. So we always sort of like wondered, man, it would be fun if we can have a blank canvas, and if we can take a stab at designing money systems that truly serves people without any of the legacy considerations that we have to deal with today. So that was sort of the very philosophical thing that brought us together. And we really also felt that the way that we go about solving money problems as an industry is probably one of the most important things we need to consider, because everybody touches the money system every single day of our lives. So the way we go about solving money challenges is kind of important, because you can't go without it. So it's up to us to make sure that we really responsible in how money system serves people and not the other way around. So that was sort of the philosophical starting point of our whole journey.
I was going to touch on that. I know we're going to go off on tangents here,
Yeah.
and I'm going to cut into something I had a note to talk to you about. But we talk about people. Now, money touches everyone. Obviously, maybe not when you're 3 or 4 years old, but certainly when you're early teens or pre-teens, you're kind of I don't know, 6, 7, 8. These days, it seems to be getting younger and younger. That kids want access to funds now. I use the word funds rather than money, because the money is very different these days to what it was. But your whole sort of business and your whole thesis around this is about the collective, right? This isn't about sort of going for one specific segment and saying we're going to narrow on this niche and this age and this type of demographic. It's quite broad, right?
Yeah. No, 100%. I mean, well, if I can ask you, Darren, isn't it very broad as well how people should go about trying to fix problems we face every single day? How we go about building a more exciting future than the one we've currently got. That's not something that is only relevant to a subset of the society. It touches everyone. And I mean, that was really where we came about, is we said, if you go and look at the current millennial generation, how are people ever expected to pursue and participate as actively as they can if they are just stressed about how are they going to make their next payment run, how are they going to make their next debt payment, how are they physically can't get by with living life to the fullest extent because of financial anxiety. And I mean, that's not I'm sure you can relate to it, to a stage in your life where you had some serious financial anxiety. Now, we're definitely not trying to say that it must just be smooth sailing ever. I think stresses are very important for people to have so that you can push yourself to the next limit. But there's a level of financial anxiety that's just not healthy in any way. And every single people probably listening to this podcast will be able to quite easily recollect a time in their life where they had some serious financial anxiety. And if they could have chosen for it not to be that way, they probably would have. And that was sort of why we said, listen, I mean, this is a much bigger problem than just us solving some school payments. We'll get to the school payments now, but that was really fundamentally what we were the problem at least that we were trying to participate on. But I think it's a good point to take it back to school payments. Because that was sort of like the one thing you wanted to discuss is like demystifying the whole school payment landscape. So after the whole philosophical debate that we had to say, listen, we need to try and take a stab at, let's design money systems that can better serve people so that people don't end up with the level of financial anxiety they have today, but they can actually go and pursue their true purpose and participate as actively as they can. We said, well, let's start with the youth market, because trying to change how of age people think about money and think about just life in general is much more difficult, because we set in our ways. You've been bombarded over at least 18-year life already with regards to how banking should work, how payments should work. You've got your service provider. So we just said, cool, let's start with the youth market. That'll probably be something worthwhile, because then we can implement a whole different way of thinking about these things and thinking about money as well. But immediately we sort of got to the roadblock of, okay, well, if you want to work with the youth market, you have to work with guardians. And if you work with guardians, then how are you going to actually distribute this thing? Because how are you going to speak to parents so you can help parents better help kids when it comes to money matters?
Yeah.
So that was sort of like a problem that we knew from day one. okay, well, we're going to have a distribution problem very practically in terms of working closely with the youth market. And then through our collective experience, we knew that schools are really struggling with overcomplicated payment infrastructure, simply put. And that's not what schools should be doing. Schools should be focusing on supporting learners and helping learners learn and be curious as much as possible so that they can go on and face the challenges of life, right? So we were like, okay, well, there might be something there. Let's better understand what is actually happening within the school payment landscape and what are all the different pieces of payments that schools are trying to manage to just run their businesses or organizations on a daily basis. And that's where we very quickly found that the payment solutions out there today, even including some of the existing solutions that's moved the game a bit forward, it's very disconnected and it's very difficult for schools to manage all these different pieces of payment infrastructure. And it takes focus away from them helping the kids and creating more vibrant learning environments. So that was sort of the problem statement that we then started with. Is cool. How can we support schools to streamline their payment infrastructure and payment ecosystem in a way that they can collect more funds in a more streamlined administrative process so that they can spend less time on managing payments and collect more from their parent audiences. And that will ultimately make them more sustainable organizations as well.
So there are kind of three parties involved in this, which is the school, which is the parents, and which is the kids, right? So there's kind of three touch points that you as a business have. Am I correct in saying that?
Well, yeah, it's actually a fourth one. There's you've got a lot of third parties also operating within the school ecosystem.
Okay.
You've actually got four.
In terms of suppliers, you mean people that are supplying services?
So I mean, tax shops are often external, clothing store providers are often external, sporting events, you've often got external third parties operating within the school campus. So you've actually got those four stakeholders ultimately that all participates together, like in at least trying to support the school ecosystem be stronger so that we can better support the kids, right? So but I mean, we on the payment side, the school really is the primary customer here. And it's all about understanding what are the different things that the school needs to manage when it comes to payments. So you'll very quickly start realizing that, cool, so you've got a school collections app that you can do collections for school outings or service days that the school runs. Then they've got their card machines at the admin office. Then they've got a cashless tuck shop solution that they use. Then they've got a cashless solution that they use for sporting events. Then they've got ticketing platforms where they use another different payment gateway. So very quickly you start realizing that school finance officers, they sit there and they do 4, 5, 6 different payment exports, pivot tables, and trying to figure out how do they do their bank recons between these different payment sources. And on the parent side, same thing. For the one, you need a wallet. For the other one, you need to give your kid cash. For the other one, you can use your card to make a payment. For the other one, you need to make a manual EFT payment. So for parents as well, it's kind of all over the show. So our whole takeaway was, well, if you can provide the school with one touch point that they can cater for all these different payment use cases and offer the parent one platform that they can use for all these different payment use cases, well, then you can solve the school payment problem. And then you can solve the parent problem so that they can ultimately collect more funds from their parent audiences. So seems kind of straightforward, but it's when you get into the detail of it that it starts getting quite complex quite quickly.
I think if you were to ask most parents, me being one of those, I know you are as well, what's your biggest challenge? It's probably not going to be payments to school. I think if someone says, what's your biggest challenge? You go, the kids, right? Or the wife. But let's be politically correct. Let's say the kids, right?
We can cut that out later.
Yeah, I know. I'm clearly sitting here alone. I think, all sort of jokes aside, the sort of financial literacy element, and we were talking about a little bit earlier, the different sort of demographics that we deal with and different sort of LSMs we deal with here on the continent. But, focusing on South Africa, I've looked through textbooks that the kids are using, and, they're talking about using ATM machines and, how to count cash. And okay, as a principle, great. But what's the evolution there? And I want to get into the solution. I really do. I want to dive into that, but
Yeah.
just talk to me about the sort of financial education. I'm not going to use the word literacy, but let's talk about the financial education. What needs to be done? What is being done, and what do you think needs to sort of be improved?
Yeah. So, Darren, and just tying the link between the school payments and the financial education component is
Yeah,
our solution on the school side. It's very clearly there just to help the school operate more efficiently, collect more funds
sure.
in a streamlined manner from how they manage the admin side of it. But what it does for us is it gives us that one key touch point to the on-campus payments where kids needs to make transactions on the school campus. And that's where the parent and the kid relationship with money actually starts. And that's where financial education truly starts for the kid. It's the first time the parent gives the kids money for tuck, often.
Yeah,
And that's where we said, okay, well, cool. So we'll solve the school payment challenge, and it'll give us that important touch point to the parents and the kid when the kid starts taking guidance from the parents in terms of how they need to think about money.
hmm
And we wanted to be closer to that so that we can help inform that a lot better.
yeah,
But in able to inform it, we need to understand what we actually want to inform, right? And that's the question of what does financial education actually mean? And that's where we found, yeah, it's quite diverse. People's views on what financial education is. There's some overlap with regards to basic budgeting, planning, saving, these generic sort of like things. But we just felt it misses sort of like the essence of the role money should play in people's lives. And for us, it was very, very, very simply put that it shouldn't actually be about money. That's the whole point. It should be about people and kids thinking how they can be of use and how they can do something useful for someone next to them. And that's where the journey should start. Because that's how we all operated long ago. When you had a barter economy, it wasn't about the money, it wasn't about this common denominated source of value. It was about the actual thing you did to someone else that they valued and they gave you something in return. Right. And that's what us is, it's almost like on a human level. That's what you should be doing every single day. So we said that's actually what financial education should be all about is how do we teach kids that, you know what, it's not about money, forget about money. It's actually about doing something useful. And if you do that in modern society, you will probably get something in the form of money because that's these days how people sort of like reference value, right?
or
And that
robots.
was like the most important starting point. And then
Yeah,
we said the second thing is when you have this money thing, how do you make sure that you don't just fall for instant gratification, fall for excessive consumption, fall for all the things that we are bombarded by every single day that tries to sell us something we don't need, but they try and make it look really important. And we just found that's where the financial service industry really got it wrong because most of the reward schemes, it gives you more stuff that you don't need. And that's not what we should be teaching our kids. So we said the second key component for us is going to be how do we ensure once kids have got money that we very early on teach them that make sure you get value from the money you actually spend. And those two things are the two foundational building blocks. Then after that, all the other stuff follows with regards to normal. Make sure you plan in terms of setting a budget. Make sure you save. Make sure you invest to build future wealth. And then lastly, giving was also a very important thing for us that closed the loop that it's not about money. Because if you can give something away, it makes it less of a obsession. It's a really bad word, but it makes people less money obsessed. If you can give it away, that doesn't rule you, you rule it, right? So the last component of our habits was giving. So that was sort of like how we thought conceptually about this whole financial education thing, that people just speak about budgeting, saving, and investing, but it's actually not really about that. It's actually about the other, like more fundamental things that we need to teach kids. Otherwise, they will fall into exactly the same trap as what the millennials fell into. And that's sort of where our approach really came in is how can we do that from that first time that a parent gives a kid money for tuck? How do we start informing these good habits on the kid front? And how do we make it as easy as possible for the parent to make sure that they teach these kids these habits without too much cognitive load? And so that was sort of our whole approach to starting off with school payments, giving us the touch point to the parent-kid money relationship early on, so we can start informing the parent to better prep the kid with regards to the habits that the kid will need in order to thrive in a complex money world, or in a money obsessed world. I think it's probably a better word.
What it is, you know what? As you were talking, I was thinking. I know you've got kids, right? I don't know whether they play Roblox. but I've been sort of immersed in this world of Roblox over the last 6 months or so. And there's a game called Grow Your Garden. I know this is not a punt for Grow Your Garden. I have no relationship. Anyway, cutting a very long story short here. I think the gratification on that, because it's very easy to earn your Robux or whatever it may be, and your whatever the currency they sort of claim there. But it gets to the point where people are kind of giving in the game. They're not getting a cash reward. They're not getting a Robux reward, right? So it's kind of that sense of, actually, I can give something to someone because I want to be their friend, or I want to like their garden, or whatever it may be. Okay, I'm not an expert, although I do spend hours on that a day. But I think that whole sort of philosophical element of, actually, it's more than money. Right, a transaction. I think we've all become so used to just walking in anywhere and tapping our phone, tapping our watch. Okay, well, we'll get paid at the end of the month and it will top itself up. Without really having much understanding about what it is you're buying, right, or what it is that your kids want. So I think it's a really interesting element that I hadn't really considered at all. But talk to me a bit about youth banking. Certainly here in South Africa, because we're a highly regulated country. We've got lots of laws. We've got lots of challenges that we need to solve as an industry in terms of fintech. How have you enabled that sort of youth banking side, where current legislation is quite opaque on that area?
How long have you got, Darren?
No, I want this in less than a minute. To slate the regulator.
I mean, heavily regulated payments and banking. So I think our regulators and the industry bodies, like yourselves as well, I think everyone's doing a great job of trying to create more clarity around how we as financial service providers should go about offering financial products in a way that is aligned with regulatory requirements, ultimately protecting the stability of the system and the customers, right? That's what it's all about. So without going into all the detail of our respective licensing and registrations and certifications and those sort of things, I think the current regulatory construct makes it, we still work closely with most of the banks in South Africa from a sponsorship perspective. And even something like the new stablecoin movement that's going on, I think is definitely opening up interesting alternatives for us to provide some innovative solutions to parents and kids that wasn't necessarily possible, I would say, a year and a half ago. But I mean, it's one of those tick box exercises that you need to make sure align to all the regulatory requirements. Try and be part of the discussion as much as possible, so that we can push the regulatory space forward as well, and ultimately so we can better serve our customers, right? So, but I mean, interesting one. It's the whole day on regulations.
That's a whole another series, let alone another podcast. Might be brave enough and do one at some point. But okay, let's move on from that. I do want to talk a little bit about actually something you've just mentioned in terms of the partnership side and the sort of ecosystem. Just to describe, I suppose, a little bit more how the Sticcit platform works. Please correct me if I'm wrong here. But me as a parent, I can use any method that I want in order to make a payment, whether it be credit card, whether it be EFT, whether it be crypto, whatever method I want to choose to pay, I can pay. Then Sticcit sits in the middle and is effectively the aggregator of those, or again, if I'm misusing words here or terminology, please correct me. But it sits as the aggregator and gives the customer, the end customer, which is the school or the education body or whoever is your client, one view of all payments coming into their environment. Is that simplify that massively? But is that the general sort of concept here?
Yeah, that's pretty spot on. So we aggregate all the different payment options that you would generally see when you do something in the e-commerce space and you go and make a payment. So all those different payment options, we offer that. But we also then offer on the card present side, Darren, I mean, for in-person payments. So both, whether it's through our closed, whether it's through our own Sticcit branded cards or bands, or whether it's a MasterCard or a Visa card, we handle both card present and e-commerce all of those different payment methods runs through us, like you said, and we've got the one relationship with the school as the merchant. So we then take care of all the heavy lifting of reporting and consolidating all the information across these different verticals. So the school has just got one touch point with us with regards to their payment information.
And the school itself would have POS devices, soft POS or hard POS through you guys, or they can use other vendors, or how does that work?
So this is now where we focused on really building a very strong payment solution. So in essence, we've got on the card present fund, we've got payment terminals. So either our own terminal, or you can download our soft POS, so just our Sticcit application.
Sure.
So that you can then start accepting payments in person. And then we also have on the e-commerce side, you can very easily embed any of our virtual payment use cases into whatever you as a school are already using. So as an example, we've integrated with D6, and they offer a payment solution that schools can set up projects and create school outings and do school communication and do all of that from. So they use our payment technology to then fulfill the payment component of it. Then we've got integrations with ticketing providers. We've got integrations with point of sale providers, pre-ordering service providers, vending machines, printing. So we're trying to, any third party or any platform doing anything within the school space where a payment might be part of the user journey, we take care of that payment component and integrate into whatever third party the school's already using. Because we just said we can't be everything to the school on all fronts, but we can really do the payments extremely well. So, and I think that's one of our like real differentiators is in that way we much more like a pay fast or pay you or DPO for that matter in the school market, where we want to work with the third parties already operating within that space rather than building all the solutions ourselves. So we're not going to build a new school admin system. We're not going to build a new school finance system. We're not going to build a new school communication application or parent application. We want the school to make use of what they've currently got, and just make sure that the heavy lifting of all the payment infrastructure is taken care of.
I think that is. I think some of the schools that we discussed last week, I'm not going to name names here, but there are so many different apps, and they all seem to have different bizarre names that you as a parent need to download. And it's, you get your messaging on one app, but then they don't really use that, so they're using WhatsApp as well. And then you've got sort of finance where you're paying into, and then you've got pay other fees into other accounts, and you've got this and that. It's become very, very complex, and something that probably needs to be rebundled rather than unbundled. So I kind of get where you're going. Now, you and your family, we've got a couple of minutes left. You and your founders, and I've not met your co-founders, but are clearly visionary people. What does the future look like? And I'm not asking sort of crystal ball things, and we're going to be flying in, hovercrafts and what have you, although you never know. But if we wind the clock forward 5 years, okay, 2030, what do you think school payments looks like? What do you think maybe financial education looks like? Again, with the South African lens.
So 2 thoughts. One would be payments, in my view, it must become commoditized. Just doing a payment for someone is not adding value in 2025. Okay, so I think that's one avenue where we at least feel that we really need to move the game forward with regards to how payments are deployed, specifically within the education market, so that schools should never have to worry about either having to pay too much or having to administer too complex payment solutions. So I think it's for us, we definitely envision a world where schools are 100% just focused on supporting learners and creating much more vibrant learning environments, and much less worried about the cost of payments or efficiently managing payments within their ecosystems. So I think that's definitely going to be there's a lot of changes coming on that front. And then I think financial education, almost like leaning into the whole payments that needs to become more commoditized, is if something becomes more commoditized, it means we need to rethink how we add value, right? So I think from a financial education perspective, we definitely want to see the industry move towards a space where whoever engages with financial services are truly better off after using the products, because financial service providers won't be able to hide behind the fact something like unsecured lending, Darren, as an example. You can't just say, well, hey, you know what? I'm going to give a guy a loan because I'm properly regulated. Because if I don't give it to them, then they're going to walk across the street around the corner and get it from someone that's going to use a cricket bat to get the money back from them. Like, that is not sufficient anymore in 2025. Like, in 2030, we need to be able to say, you know what, I gave someone a loan and check how I helped that person change his or her life after that loan. So that's how we sort of, like, we all need to level up completely how we think about adding value to our end customers, whether it's a school that needs to focus on learning and not managing payments and paying a lot of money for it, or whether it's a user, a kid or parent that needs to make sure that they can actually go and pursue their true purpose and not be constrained by their money matters because the financial services players somehow gave them products that wasn't necessarily fit for purpose, or that drove the wrong behavior at that user. So it's sort of just like a whole bunch of leveling up that everybody is going to have to do, because a lot of the solutions we have today will become completely commoditized, and you can't justify that as a value add anymore.
No.
And then there'll be a much bigger focus on what's the true value add that we as financial services have to our end customers. And the spotlight will be much more in that. And just the last thing, I mean, I'm quite excited about these sort of things is, as a KPI, you can't have a recurring active user anymore as a key KPI. You can't claim 23 million users that's using my services. Hey, check what a big difference I'm making. Your KPI will need to become, well, great, 23 million users used your solution, but then what? What happened? So I want to be able to say 23 million users used my solution, and because of that, they now have got 2 side hustles, and they're doing much more in society because they understand earning more comes from doing more, and they learn that through my platform. So that's sort of like the leveling up, even on like a KPI level. It's like we're trying to challenge everyone that we, just level up the level that we, or from an abstraction perspective, we need to add more value to people and not to commoditize services that you shouldn't actually be paying for.
Theo, I have to be honest with you. When I sort of first spoke to you, and I think we first had an engagement through Finasa, we didn't sort of talk much. And then when we first had a conversation last week, or whenever it was, I really didn't get the sort of philosophical view that you clearly have, and it's hugely encouraging. I think it's very different. I have the pleasure of speaking to lots of people in the industry. There's probably only one other person I can think of that has stood out for actually building a business out of not just out of what am I looking for? Success, or just with the pure goal of success, but actually wanting to make a true impact in the ecosystem and to people's lives. So kudos to you and your business partners, and I sincerely mean that. This is not rehearsed whatsoever. Theo, there are so many more elements that I really want to go through with you, but we're kind of out of time. I really want to talk through the yield elements, the closed loop, the different payment sort of mechanisms and options, what the future kind of looks like as well, where else you're adding value in terms of that whole sort of value chain. I'd love to have you back on maybe in a couple of months' time before Christmas, and talk to you a little bit more. But Theo, if there's anything that anyone wants to sort of find out about the business, LinkedIn, website, we can put some links down here. I know you've got some content you're working on as well. Where should we direct people?
So Darren, easiest will be, if you want to speak to me directly, reach out on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm trying to be a bit more active on the platform itself. Otherwise, if it's with regards to Sticcit itself, we've got a lovely support there. So support@sticcit.co.za. That's the easiest way to get into our ecosystem. And someone, whatever it is that you want to ask us or speak to us about, that's the place to go. And on that, I would honestly, all the listeners, if you are doing anything within this education market, if you are passionate about how we make sure we equip future generations to deal with the nonsense that we are leaving them with, please do reach out to us so that we can figure out how to work together, because it's definitely not going to be us alone that hopefully changes the world for them, but the larger ecosystem. So yeah, please reach out and get involved. Let's see how we can do this thing together.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Theo. Great to have you on. Looking forward to sort of seeing the journey. Looking forward to grabbing you in Somerset West as well for a drink or a haircut. Sorry, that was
100%.
an
Maybe
inward joke about the haircut. But yeah, I hope your son doesn't give you too much more strife about that. But best of luck with everything. Fascinating business, fascinating model, and I wish you the very best of success.
good stuff. Thanks, Darren. Appreciate
Amazing.
it.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
Take care. Cheers.
Bye.